welcome to WG Hub Live. This is the second of our autumn edition of the Hub. Welcome to new viewers of the Hub and to those who are coming back again for another time. This series, we're looking at strategies for dealing and coping with the pandemic, as well as moving forward. What can we do in positive steps? So today, we're looking at more of the HR employment aspects, what's happening with support, that sort of thing, and to give you some extra ideas today and hopefully a few takeaways. We will be sticking to our usual sort of hour, so please use the Q&As. If you can use the function on the system and ask the questions, and then after we've had our presentations, we'll then go into those questions and see what answers we can come up with. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mandy Fitzmaurice, HR guru from Purple, who you will have known from a previous seminar. So good morning, Mandy. Can you just tell us what's happening this morning?
Yeah, morning everybody. Thanks for inviting me back in. So it's nice to see you guys all again. Yes. So this morning I'm going to be bringing everybody up to date, up to speed on the latest development in the land of furlough, because we've gone from furlough that got extended, then we went for job support scheme, and now that's gone on, and we've gone to the new extended furlough. So I thought it'd be useful to bring everybody up to date with what that means, because there are some changes in amongst that as well. So I'm going to be talking about that. And then handing over to my colleague who you're going to introduce just now. Okay, fantastic. And yes, welcome to Paula Thompson from Stress Right. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for inviting me along this morning to talk. I'm going to be following on from what Mandy's saying, and I'm going to be talking to you about getting your employees to return to work, as I'm hearing lots of queries and questions about that. I actually work with people with stress and anxiety, so either individuals or companies. So we'll be talking about some resilience, some emotional intelligence, and what you can do as employers to look after your employees.
Okay, that's great, Paula. Thank you very much. And we've also got Holly, our own Holly Bruce this morning. Good morning, Holly.
Hello.
Yeah, so Holly's joining the panel for our discussion later on. Holly works in our own HR department and is going to share a few insights, I'm sure, with some of the questions that come through. So let's crack on then, Mandy. If you've got your presentation ready.
I have. So here, hopefully the technology is kind to me now. So let's go here and go there and go there. Okay, so can everybody see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, you should have purple in front of you now with a couple of photos of our friend actually at the moment, Mr. Rishi Sunak, has just been very kind and extended the furlough scheme for us. So I want to take you through what's the latest that we've got on the furlough scheme, what's happened just now. So the job support scheme that we were all busy getting ready for, issuing agreements for, and getting our heads around what it's going to mean for job support scheme. Well, that's now just been postponed until we don't know. So we're assuming it's postponed. Whether it comes back or not again in the new year, we don't know. At the minute, what's been replaced, what's come back into place is the extended furlough scheme, which is great news, which is going to be there now until the 31st of March. So that's brilliant news. If you've been using the furlough scheme up to now, which originally was going to end on the 31st of October, but that's now had an extension through to the 31st of March. What we also know is that the £1,000 job retention bonus that was going to be a little bounty due to come to us if you had people on furlough and still employed in January, that's now essentially been scrapped. They're saying it's been, kind of put on hold. It's going to be reviewed, but I think it's probably fair to say with the extension of the furlough scheme now through till March, they needed to get some money back somewhere, and that's, whether we see that come through later on down the line or something different. I think I wouldn't hold your hat on that one if you were expecting that bonus to come through in January now. But instead, we've got furlough until the end of March. So I think it's feels like a bit of a fair trade, I would say. The original monthly cap of £2,500 for claiming furloughs still applies, so it's exactly the same. The difference is the new qualifying date to be eligible is midnight on the 30th of October. So it's a really important date. So if you remember going backwards, our original date, you had to be on the payroll as of the 28th of February, and everyone was scrabbling around to make sure that everyone was on there. So it's not just it's on your payroll or on you've issued, doesn't mean that you've issued someone with a contract of employment. Is that HMRC have to know through the RTI submission that that person was on the payroll as of midnight on the 30th of October. If they weren't, then not going to qualify. Okay, so if you had someone start on the 31st of October or the 1st of November, or you were late in submitting your RTI submission in October, you'll probably have missed the boat, and that's not going to count. So that's an important deadline. So as I said, extended now to the 31st of March, which is great stuff. Claims for November, the slightly difference in the claim period, because we had quite a wide window in order to be able to make the claims every month. Now they're tightening that down slightly now. So any claims that you want to make for furlough in November, they have to be made by the 14th of December. Then December have to be made by the 14th of January, and so forth as you go forward. So that's, you know, a little tip there. I would put that date in your diary or have a word with your payroll department, because, you know, we all had it's been fairly flexible. You could kind of straddle months when you were making your claims, and you had pretty much plenty of time to do it. They've really tightened that down now. So that's something that I've just picked up in the last couple of days, but important point to remember. There's no minimum number of weeks or days an employee must be on furlough. So if you remember right in the early days, they had to be on for blocks of 3 weeks at a time. That's gone, that we don't have to do that. So you can do, my favourite term is the flip-flop furlough. So you can bring them on, bring them off. So if you want, so I've got a member of staff on furlough at the minute. She's working half days, so she just works mornings, so she's on 50% furlough. So you can do whatever works for you in your business. It may be that someone maybe can come in for a day, or if the business goes up, the volume of business goes up or goes down, you can work it around what suits you as your business needs. So that's really great. You've got flexibility. What you have to remember is that you need to make sure you keep good records of where those people are coming in, because if Mr. HMRC comes to call later on down the line to do an audit, you'd have to be able to show through your records how the hours were actually calculated. Okay. No maximum number on a maximum of the number of employees you can claim for after the 1st of November, whereas before you couldn't claim for any more than the original. So the second half of furlough, if you remember, after June, when they extended it a bit longer, you couldn't claim for any more employees than you had done in the first wave. That's now gone. As it stands at the minute, you can claim for as many as you need to. Okay, so you've got flexibility there. So that's kind of some headlines of the latest things where we're at the minute. So what does this extended furlough look like? So as we know, it's up there to the 31st of March, which is great. The claims are capped at 80%. So those of you that maybe have been claiming furlough before, you'll remembered that September it dropped down to 70%, and then October it went down to 60%. We're back up to 80%. So that's fantastic news. The cap is still the same, £2,500. It may change in terms of the 80%. What the government has said is that they're going to review it in January. I think that probably depends it was going to depend how everything goes, what the economy is looking like, what the rate of infections are. So there's lots of what ifs, but I think they're reserving their rights, if you like, to go back and review it. And if they need to, they might change that down. So we're good, I think, until the end of January, 80%, but it could go down after that. Time will tell. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So the employee receives 80% still. So all through all of this, all the furlough, it's always been that the employee receives 80%. It's just what you can claim from the government that has tapered down. Yeah. You can still top up if you wish. So some of you, we've done it for our employees. We've topped them up to 100% because we're kind of nice guys like that. You may be able to do it. A lot of employers actually just genuinely can't afford to do that. But the option is there if you wish to. You can top it up. You are still going to have to pay your NICs and pension contributions, so that's still something to factor in, because on £2,500, that's still a chunk of cash every month that you've got to fork out. So, there's some number crunching still to be done. It all sounds great, and it is great, but there are still some costs in there. Not everything is covered. We've talked about they must be on payroll as of midnight on the 30th of October in order to make your claim. If they were previously furloughed, the pay calculations are the same as they were before. So you don't have to kind of redo all of that, which was enough. Lots of head scratching went on ensuring there's getting the calculation. So that's the same. Fixed hours, 0 hours agency workers, they're all included, as well as standard employment contracts. So no change in that. Everybody's still entitled, providing they qualify on the dates. For new furloughers, there are a revised set of calculations, and I'm going to go through those in a moment for you. You can take back employees who were made redundant after the 23rd of September and put them back on furlough, but you need to take a bit of care on that. And again, I'll come back to that in a moment or two, just to give you, just to kind of sow some seeds of thoughts about what you need to think about if you were going down that road. I know we've had quite a lot of clients where employees have come back, recently made redundant and asked, oh, please, can you take me back? I've seen the furlough scheme's been extended. But there are some real genuine issues to consider, and that's what I'll talk about those in a mo. And the claim process is the same. You can claim up to 14 days in advance, which is great, because that can help you on your cash flow. Okay. So that's kind of some headlines of the extended ones. Let's just take a quick look at the new pay calculations. So for those on a fixed salary, it's 80% of the wages payable in the last pay period before the 30th of October, which is the magic calculation date. So if the employee was last paid on the 30th of September and their wages were 1850 gross, then 80% of that is 1480, which will therefore mean their rate of furlough for the period of 1st to the 30th of November 2020 and thereafter. So to get a daily rate, take the 1480, divide it by 30 days in November, and there is your daily rate of furlough, and then multiply that by the number of days of furlough that you're claiming. So when they're on a fixed wage, it's fairly straightforward. It is pretty much easy to do. What had a query come up yesterday with a client who's just someone that's just gone and reduced hours on the 1st of November, and therefore their pay is reduced. And that lady's furlough has got to be based on the salary before that reduction took place. So they're actually in quite a good position, really. It wouldn't work so good, obviously, if you were on part-time, shorter hours, and then had an increase on the 1st of November, because the rate of furlough would have to be taken as the rate before the increase had happened before the 1st of November. Kind of makes sense. So what happens on for variable pay? So it's 80% of the average wages paid between the start date of their employment or the 6th of April, whichever is the later, and then the day before the period of furlough period begins. So it's a bit of a mouthful. So as an example, if you started on the 20th of March, going on furlough from the 1st to the 30th of November, the total days between the 6th of April. So remember, it's either the start date or 6th of April, whichever is the later. Between the 6th of April and the 31st of October is 208 days. So if the total earnings in that period was, say, 12,500, divided by 208 gives you an average daily rate. Multiply that by 80%, and there's your rate, your daily rate of furlough. So that's broadly speaking how you calculate the new calculations if you've got new furloughers, as it were, coming onto the scheme. For those that were on furlough originally, exactly the same basis as it was before. Okay, so you don't have to redo any calculations for the old furloughers, just the new ones. Okay. So legal stuff, just to think about here, you've got to have written agreements in place as you did before. So if you've got previous furlough agreements for your first tranche, they're probably going to be okay, to be honest with you. Check the wording and the dates, and if you had a date in there that says that the furlough scheme's going to end on the 31st of October, you probably would have to update that, issue an addendum, or if in doubt, just issue a new up-to-date agreement. But you must have some form of agreement in place with the employees to accept lower rates of pay. Holiday can be taken through furlough, but it's got to be topped up to 100%, and I'll come back and mention that a little bit later. But furlough must not be used to pay for holiday. So if you think, oh, I've got some, I'll put you on holiday and I'll claim furlough for that, it's kind of the tail wagging the dog there, and that will be classed as fraud by HMRC. You can't do that. So if you've got someone you're going to place someone on furlough because you've not got enough work for them to do, and through that period, it just so happens they've got some booked holiday, then yes, they can continue to take that holiday and you must top it up, but you can't do it the other way around. So just be careful on that. Can they take up other paid work whilst they're on furlough? Yes, they can. More subject to your own contracts of employment. So if you say in your contracts, thou shalt not work for anybody else, then obviously, they've got to ask your permission first. But as far as HMRC are concerned, it's okay for them to do that, yeah? They'll just get taxed at basic rate tax on their secondary job. You must keep detailed records for 5 years. So this is a record of any hours that they work on, the agreements that you get signed. So you must make sure you keep those. In December, apparently HMRC are going to publish all the names of all the firms claiming furlough. So I'm not sure if it's, is it a naming and shaming? Maybe in part, they've got their hotline, reporting hotline for confidential whistleblowers, I suppose, if you like, for any employees that may feel that their employer is misusing or that it's not being operated in the correct way, but they're actually going to publish the names of all firms claiming furlough. If you're doing it in the right way, who cares really? It doesn't really matter. But that's a new thing that they're going to introduce. One of the things we get asked a lot, and I think over the last weeks since the extension of furlough has been announced, is lots of phone calls from employees who sadly have been made recently redundant, and there are lots of them. I think anybody listening today probably may well have had this experience in their own business. I know we've been doing redundancies now pretty much back to back for the last 3 months. It's a grim, sad old time out there. But can you take them back? Yes, but I think the big key that I would put back to you is, can you afford it? And there's some things that you just need to think about here is when the contract, if you take them back, that contract of employment restarts, it's like, you press rewind to go forward again, which means that their continuous service, for example, may go over 2 years. Now, why is that an issue? Well, because when you go over 2 years, then automatically qualify for statutory redundancy pay, and also they've got additional employment rights. So it all gets a bit harder, if you like, and potentially a bit more expensive if you go over that 2 years. And if you think we're talking potentially another 5 months away, so that could make a hell of a difference. And if you're taking someone back on now, their reasonable expectation probably is they're going to sit there now until the end of March. So you need to bear that in mind before you be the hero. I'm not saying you be mean, and it is a very kind thing to do, but there are implications behind it that you don't go into that lightly before you agree to that. Think it through. One of the biggest issues is that holiday will continue to accrue through that period. So between November and March, that would equate to about at least 12 days. Yeah, so that's quite a chunk. That's 5 months. That's quite a chunk of holiday, nearly 6 months worth. And you would have to pay, if they remained on furlough, you would have to pay to top that up to 100% and pay the NICs on top of that. And if you also bear in mind that if the government do what they kind of suggest they may do in January and then bring the 80% level down, then the claim that the amount that you're going to get from the government to offset that might go down maybe to 70% or 60%, as we've seen recently. So you could potentially then be in for having to pay that employee even more. That would very much depend on how you word the agreements with them. You'd have to really nail that down to protect yourself. But it's only so far that you can go, because essentially they're still on your books as an employee and therefore have employment rights. Yeah, even more so after 2 years. So what I'm saying to you is it could work out pretty expensive. So before you agree to that, whilst there's a lot of heartstrings being pulled where this is concerned at the minute for all understandable reasons, do think about, because one of the main reasons that you've probably made someone redundant in the first place is because of the costs. Yeah, so think it through. If you've got any doubts and you ever want some help, then give me a call. I'm always happy to have a chat with somebody to talk the situation through and give advice. So that's the redundancy side. So the other big question that comes out, can we still work out redundancy notice while claiming furlough? And this has been widely used, and actually the government have been fine about it. At the moment, the answer is yes. Yeah, but the word on the street is that they're going to review this at the beginning of December, which, what would we take from that? Well, if they're going to review it, it may mean that they're going to stop it. If we had gone on to the job support scheme, you couldn't have claimed job support while someone was on notice or being made redundant. Now, that hasn't been the case with furlough, but it does, with this spinning around right now, it does kind of leave you to think that, is this where they're leading with it? I suspect that might be the case. Anything that you've done at the minute, if you've got people on notice in November, that's fine, that's okay. But just bear in mind in your planning, if you're planning further forward, that might not be possible, and it would make a significant difference to your costs, your final costs, if you were planning to be able to claim 80% of this particularly if someone's maybe on 3 months notice or has 12 weeks notice, statutory notice, make a big difference. So just something to bear in mind as you're going forward. Can we get employees to use up holiday during furlough? Yes, yeah, you can. That's all fine. There doesn't seem to be any whisper that that's going to go away, but you've got to top it up to 100%. So normal thing here. And don't forget also bank holidays need to be topped up to 100%, particularly if they're specified in the contract. So for example, you've got 20 days plus 8 bank holidays, then you've got to make sure that you top them up to the 80%. If you want employees to take holiday whilst they're on furlough or at any time, actually, all you have to do is give them twice as much notice as the amount of holiday you want them to take. And that's been there for years. That's part of employment legislation as it stands. So if you want someone to take a week off, you have to give them 2 weeks notice, and there's nothing they can do about that. Okay, and that's a very useful. We're getting to the end of most holiday years at the minute, and I know this is a challenge for lots of businesses right now, thinking we've got all this holiday. What the heck are we going to do with it all? We don't really want to carry it over because it's like a snowball. It just kind of gathers more and more as you go forward, and it's difficult to get rid of. So you might want to think about that strategy to manage that down and write to your employees, maybe to try and use up those holiday balances as you go forward from here. Can employees stay on furlough during sickness is another one. Yes, but what it's not intended to be used for short-term absence, sickness absence. But if they're currently off sick, they can still be furloughed. So if you've got somebody off that's been off for a couple of weeks, maybe they're struggling with some depression or anxiety, for example, can you put them on furlough? Yeah, you can. You can absolutely do that. It's completely legitimate to do so. If they become ill or have to self-isolate, ultimately it's up to you whether you move them onto SSP or keep them on furlough. Yeah. There's different people have different views on it in terms of the principle of the matter and the morale sort of situation of it. If they're sick, they're sick. If they were at work and they were ill, what would they get paid? SSP or subject to your own company sick pay policy. Yeah. But the furlough is there, so it's your decision at the end of the day. And ultimately, contrary to what many employees believe, the decision to put someone on furlough is yours as the employer. It isn't the employee. So it's not their right to go be placed onto furlough. It's your decision as to whether do you have enough work for them or not. If not, then you can use the scheme to claim 80% of their wages. So that's kind of where we are on furlough. As much as it is at the minute, it is a bit of a moving feast, I would say, at the minute. The latest guidance came out, detailed guidance came out on the 10th or 11th, but little bits keep dripping out. Probably the last one I haven't featured on there, which is around the sickness one, is that whilst they told us that shielding was gone, no, Boris said we don't have shielding anymore, actually it's back. It slipped back in on around about the 4th or 5th of November. Didn't really make a big deal about it, but there are letters now going out to individuals. So you may well find that you're getting letters from employees telling them, advising them to shield that they've received from the NHS. So shielding is back. So you'll need to think about that as well. And if they're shielding, they would be entitled to furlough. Yeah, that's a way to keep them paid. Right. That's kind of me for today. So hopefully that's been useful. And I think maybe, talking about the shielding and the sickness and the reasons why people are off sick at the minute is probably a nice segue in really to introduce Paula. I'll take some questions in a minute. Paula's absolutely brilliant, has worked with a lot of my clients in helping a lot of the staff to come to terms with and find coping strategies for getting back into the workplace when they're really genuinely quite fearful and worried, and maybe about their home situation or coming back into the workplace, to give them some reassurance. I mean, that's a very, very brief insight into what Paula can do, but I thought it'd be really helpful for guys to be able to hear the kind of support that's available out there. Maybe it's quite unusual, the kind of support that Paula can offer. So that's me for today. Happy to answer any questions if anyone wants to answer any questions now, or we want to leave it till later. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Stop share. There you go, and come back. So.
Okay, over to you then, Paula, if that's all right. Thank you very much, Mandy. That's great as normal.
Okay, you're welcome.
It's what we come to expect, a great summary of everything that's going on at the minute in terms of furlough. So thank you very much. So yeah, Paula, are you ready to?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Just bear with me 1 second while I do the inevitable sharing screen, as long as technology works. There we go. There we go. Brilliant. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for that, Mandy, the bits and pieces that you've shared with us there. What I want to sort of focus on today, guys, is really getting people back into the workplace. And it doesn't want to go forward. Okay. No. Are we going to have technical issues? Yeah. Bear with me a second. I will just stop sharing and do it a different way. Start fresh.
I just remind everybody, please send in the questions through the Q&A or through the chat box. Not a problem at all. We should have a quite interesting session after this. So we'll deal with the questions we have for Mandy and Paula.
Thank you, Marion. Yes, so at the moment I'm hearing an awful lot of concerns about returning to work. I mean, you know, there is the financial commitments, there's the financial issues that companies have got, but I'm looking at the moment from an employee perspective and what you can do as an employer to help your employees. So the sort of things that I'm hearing from employers at the moment is, you know, the commute to work, the cleanliness when they get there, the safety at work, you know, safe working space, the congestions at the breakout room, in the kitchen, you know, arrival at home and the congestion with that. And also colleagues that don't comply. You know, we've got two big camps here. We've got one camp of people that are just really being very cautious, very compliant, and then we've got the other camp of people going, you know what, it's fine, it's not going to hurt me. But the one thing that has really come to the fore is the anxiety that people are going through at the moment. And that has absolutely rocketed across the board. It's not confined to one particular area at all, whether it's senior management or employees, you know, somebody on reception, whatever, it is literally right across the board. And I'll come back to that in a second. So it's very much a time for communication, reassurance, and really resilience. Resilience is really, really important. You know, the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And I would think that we would all share that at the moment, that we all need some resilience because it is all really, really difficult at the moment. So for you as an employer, really communicate with your staff. You know, Mandy's gone through a whole range of things due to the furlough and finances, and that's a big issue with anxiety. How are people going to pay their bills? So go back to communication. Keep in contact with your employees. Explain what you've done to keep them safe. Make sure that they're aware of your policies and procedures. You know, offer access to one-to-one counselling support in any way that you can. You know, most companies should have some sort of wellness program in place. And be open to the consequences of unreasonable absence. Now, what we mean for that is we've got some people that actually just want to stay at home. You know, they're what we would call in the old-fashioned way, swinging the ledge, you know, oh, I can't possibly come in because this and this. And it's down to you to sort of be able to differentiate from the people that are really just trying to get away with what they can and people that have genuinely got a problem. So look for the signs and symptoms of stress and anxiety. And, you know, this presentation today is quite short, and obviously going through the signs and symptoms is quite a big topic. But things like, so for instance, if somebody was normally life and soul of the party and then they're very reserved, somebody who is really genuinely struggling to go out, and that's where, again, come to the communication. If they're not going out with their friends and family, then the chances are they are genuinely struggling with stress and anxiety. Offer advice and guidance of how they can become more resilient, and I will give you some hints and tips on how you can do that for your employees too. And offer advice of how they can stay healthy. Now, you know, by all means, you are not qualified to give medical advice. You're not qualified to give counselling advice. But what you can do is a very general advice and help and support. So we'll come on to that in a second. As I said earlier on, you know, stress and anxiety in the workplace is not confined to any particular industry, job sectors, management levels. It just hits anybody at any time and any level. And sometimes what's happened through this lockdown and COVID in general, people have sort of gone on for a while and gone, yeah, I can deal with this. And then suddenly it's hit them like a brick wall. And I'm definitely finding at the moment, this second lockdown has caused way more stress and anxiety than it did the first time. The first time, it actually became a little bit of a novelty, didn't it? So, oh, we can stay at home, we can do the garden, we can get outside, it's nice and sunny, we can do this, we can do this. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, well, I've done all of that. I've isolated for this long. You know, now what am I going to do? How am I going to overcome it? In the workplace, very much is, if you are going into the office, the demands are a lot higher. You've got people that are, you know, if you're taking phone calls from the general public, for instance, in your business, you may have people that are really scared, really frightened, really angry as well. How do you as an employee look after yourself, and how do you deal with that? And as a manager, how do you support your employee in that environment as well? Just as a sideline, just remember, if you are taking a phone call from somebody, that person on the other end will only see a voice and a black hole. They will not be relating it to you as an individual. They will not understand that you've got your own issues, you've got your own problems, you've got a pile of work that's stacked up here. All they will see in their mind is a voice and a black hole. And you on the other end, if that person's really having a go at you, you'll just see this really angry face, that real person that's interfered with you trying to get on with everything else. And it's about communication and resilience, obviously. So I want to just talk briefly about resilience. What I'd like you to sort of try and focus on as far as resilience is about is trying to change your mindset. So try and be mindful about how you are acting. So what words are you using? If I was to say something to Ian and say the same thing to Mandy and Holly, they all could hear it in a slightly different way. So just be extremely careful at the moment about the words that you use. You know, hopefully you've had good communication with your employees. You know how they react to certain things. You've understood some of the emotional intelligence, how they respond to the way that you speak. So just because you're feeling anxious and you're feeling stressed and your workload is massive and you're worried about everything else, to get the best out of your employees, you need to be mindful of how you communicate to them, how you treat them. How would you want to be treated? Also is very important. It's a two-way street. So really, really think about the words that you use, your body actions. Just as a sideline, 80% of all communication is non-verbal. So when we're doing these Zoom calls, we are losing so much of our personal communication to individuals. You'll see, hopefully, that I'm using my hands a lot. That's me as a person. I use expression in that way. Over Zoom, that is really lost a lot. And we're doing a lot of meetings with our employees and employers and clients to a certain degree. And that communication is really lost, or the visual communication is really lost. So again, be mindful of that and be mindful of what you're saying and how you're saying it. Try to get that engagement a little bit more. As humans, we are built to look for the negativity, fight or flight. I'm sure some of you have heard that before. When we're stressed and anxious, we go into that mode straight away. And it's extremely difficult to try and change that mindset, but change that mindset is what we need to do. So I'm just going to take you through, just as I finish up, guys, so I'm just going to take you through a little bit of a few elements that you can do for your employees. Emotional intelligence, understanding you and others. I cannot stress to you guys how important that is. These are all the softer skills in the business arena, I do appreciate. But if you look after your employees, they will look after you. You will maintain a good level of recruitment. You won't be losing people. You will have employees that are brought into you and the business if you just spend a little bit more time to understand your employees and look after them. So emotional intelligence, understand how they work, understand how their emotions are affected. Get to know them, you know, as you walk by their desk, if they've got a picture of their dog or their child, just have a conversation about it. You'll be amazed at how different that relationship becomes. And just another little tip that I will give you is sleep is really, really important. It's absolutely massive for us as a human to have good night's sleep. And there's lots of techniques to make sure you do. But what I would say, in that time when you sort of wake up, you're not quite awake, you're not quite asleep that first thing in the morning, just try and put yourself into a place that you would feel really happy and contented in, somewhere that you would like to be, whether it's walking in the woods, swimming in the sea, walking up a mountain, whatever it is. Just try and think of that and smile. And I know that that sounds like, you know, all fluffy and nice, but I will guarantee if you put a smile on your face first thing in the morning, things won't be so bad. And if you walk into the office or even on your commute to work, if you just smile at people, it's infectious. Just simple little thing. They will smile back, which makes you smile more, and that will lighten the load. So we'll go on to good communications, good communication skills. Be consistent, be clear, but be courteous. You know, we're all struggling. Every one of us is struggling in one way and another. We don't know what that other person's issues are. We don't know what they're struggling with. So just be courteous. It could be that you're the only person that smiles at them that day, and that could make a huge difference. Real basics, good health. Eat well as you can afford to do. Eat regularly. Keep that level of sugar and carbohydrates and all the other foods, vitamins and minerals up all during your day. Stay hydrated. Please, please, please try and stay away from your fizzy drinks, your energy drinks. It takes 20 litres of water to get rid of a can of Coca-Cola through your body. So when we start to talk about your energy drinks, I did some training with some students, and they were drinking 2 or 3 cans of an energy drink a day, and they were having to increase because the hit wasn't enough, and it's like a drug. So just trying at least 2 litres of water a day. Exercise regularly. That's not me saying to you get out there and go to the gym 4 times a week and, you know, hours worth of. Just get outside, get out in the fresh air and walk. At least that's moving the body around. That'll help with the adrenaline and the cortisol that we build up in our bodies when we are stressed. And sleep. Sleep is vital. Make sure that you stay off of your any laptops, iPads, phones 2 hours before you go to sleep. Keep the lights low. Don't suddenly think, oh, I'm dozing off on the sofa, I'm going to bed. Go to the bathroom, switch on a bright light. Your brain will think it's time to wake up again. So there's lots and lots of techniques to make sure that you do sleep well. But the last thing, and the thing that I really, really want to make you aware of, know your limitations. Know what you can cope with. Don't take on everybody else's problems, and then you end up as the one that's stressed and anxious. Know when to say no. Know when to push back. Be there. Understand their issues. Understand what you can do. If you have reached your limit, understand when you need support too. But also know when you can push back with your employees or friends and family, and then direct them to whatever help that they need. There's loads and loads of help out there, online, on the phone, in person, loads of it. So just direct them somewhere that they need to go. And control your thoughts. Like we said with the resilience, really, it's a change of mindset. If you can get a positive mindset going, then that's infectious. Other people will come along with you. So people suffering from stress or health anxiety can still thrive at work. They just need the right support around them. And I hope that's a really brief overview for you guys to a few techniques for you to be able to use for yourself, for your friends and family, but certainly for your employees. And of course, you know, definitely be available for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Thank you very much. It's, you know, very insightful, very much appreciated. And in this difficult, you know, it is difficult times, and at the end of the day, everybody's coping with these very differently, aren't they?
Exactly.
Like you said, there's an interesting thing on the. There's a little bit. One thing I don't do now is, with not travelling to the office as early as I used to do, is I tend to watch a little bit of breakfast television for about 10 minutes. I get this 10 minutes while I have a cup of tea. And they were talking about, this morning, they were talking about these adverts that are now coming out for Christmas, reflecting more kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, you know, we talk about the development of stress. Well, that comes from somewhere. And most of the time, it's because somebody not necessarily done something wrong, but they haven't thought about it as much as they should have done and passed the problem on to other people. So,
yes. We get a problem in our heads and it grows, absolutely grows into a massive problem if we don't deal with it. And like I said in the presentation, being kind to somebody, just smiling at somebody, just being courteous to somebody can absolutely change their day. But it's also what I call feeds you as well, because it comes back to you. You know, if you do something nice to somebody, if you just, you know, went along, oh, there you are, there's a cup of tea, I've made you a cup of tea, unexpected, that person will be so pleased and so grateful. And then you feel like you've actually achieved and you've made somebody's life just that little bit better. It doesn't have to be major things. It's just little things, little acts of kindness. Excuse me, little acts of kindness can make a huge difference.
I think it's probably worth saying that one of the complaints that we've regularly heard over the last few months with people being on furlough, particularly those that have been maybe on furlough, because some people have been stuck on furlough since March. It's a long time, yeah. And some businesses have been absolutely fantastic in maintaining contact, you know, have like quiz sessions or regular coffee mornings and catch-up times. But there are some companies out there that have done nothing. Mm-hmm. And these employees have been sat there for 5, 6, 7 months, 8 months now, and haven't heard from anybody at all. It's one of the biggest complaints that we're getting. And then, you know, and then if you picture the scenario, I've been on furlough since March, and then the first call I get from my employer is to start a redundancy process.
Yeah, I had one of my clients, she was exactly the same, worked for a reasonable sized company. She was on furlough, and the company had paid for her to come and see me anyway, so they knew that she was struggling with stress and anxiety. And for 3 months, she didn't even have any communication from them whatsoever, not even an email, not a phone call, absolutely nothing. And her anxiety levels were absolutely sky high, because she was saying to me, I don't think I've got a job to go back to. What am I going to do? I have no idea what's going on. Why have they picked on me? They just hadn't communicated to anybody. But she was in her own little bubble, and that little problem grew to such an extent. She was crying all day, and all it would have taken was an email from the company just to say, look, you know, this is what's happening, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, and the onus is on the employer to make that call, not on the employees to have to phone in and say, because I've had some, you know, some businesses, some managers say to me, well, they could have phoned me. Well, actually, that's not the way it works. You know, the clue is in the title manager. You know, the responsibility is on the person, the manager of that individual or the company, to reach out and make contacts. It's called just duty of care, basic duty of care, to keep that relationship going and to let the person know. You know, it's a scary, worrying time out there. You know, for all we know, that person could have had COVID, or had a member of their family had COVID, maybe lost them, all sorts of dreadful things, you know. So it's one of the biggest complaints that we're getting, you know, when we're sitting down particularly through redundancy consultations, is that, you know, they feel really badly treated. So it puts a sour note on the whole employee relationship, even to get them people coming back to work. You know, they get a phone call out the blue and say, all right, you can come back on Monday. Oh, really? Okay. Now you speak to me, now you're ready. So, I think, Paula's absolutely right. I can't emphasize enough there. Make sure if you've got people on furlough, keep in touch with them. I'm not saying every day or every week, but, once a fortnight. But the other key thing is if you say you're going to do it, make sure you follow through. Because there's also been quite a lot of managers, I'll make sure I check in with you every Friday. And because they're busy and they're trying to do more because they're only them at work, all for understandable reasons, they forget. But that can cause such a major issue, more issues for you. So, it's things that you kind of have to think about, even if you put it in your diary to make sure you remember. It's really important.
And there are a lot of employees, I think, feeling that they must come back to work. There's a lot of pressure on them, and they're trying to balance their financial situation, their family life, and all that sort of thing. I
think they're also worried now. A lot of employees are worried now that if they've been on furlough a long time, the longer I'm off, the less likely it is that I'm going to have a job. And actually, they're probably right. Because if you just think of, I know it sounds really hard, but if you think about it logically, if I've managed without you for 7-8 months now, we've worked around that. All of a sudden, that's not looking right. I think if I was the employee, if I was unfortunately an employee and being sat at home right now, I think I would be pushed. I'd have been pushing to ask some of those questions. Although my employer should have been talking to me, I think I would be encouraged to talk to them. That's easy for me to say, sitting where I do and seeing both sides of the coin. But you can understand that if the longer you're sat at home, it's not great, is it? Because you're managing without them. So and employers are reducing their sizes.
And the employers that haven't been in touch with their employees, I've had probably 2 or 3 that have actually gone and got other jobs and left purely because they didn't know whether they had a job. And for them it was like, well, certainly the lady that was very stressed, but 2 others, I've just not heard anything, I don't know, I can't afford not to have a job, so I'm going to leave. So that company could have wanted those people back, and now they're left with having to try and recruit, retrain and start all over again. So the cost implications are massive.
I think there's a potential issue in there later down the line for claims as well. Just not contacting somebody isn't breaking the law in any way, but there's the whole, when it comes down to potential constructive dismissal claims later down the line, where my employer didn't have never said a word to me in 8 months all the time I was there, and I didn't know what was going on. And then when I came back, maybe my job had radically changed and I felt that my position was untenable. I can see, I'm not saying it's happening or it's going to happen, but you can see when you play that out to any reasonable person, because that's all tribunal judges are, reasonable people like you and I. If you played that story out to somebody, how would you look at that? Would you look at reasonable and fair, for that person? So I think there is, it'll be really interesting times in kind of 2 years, 18 months to 2 years time. We are going to see those kind of claims and cases coming through. So it is worth you as employers thinking about how you behave towards and how you treat your employees now. Because there's a potential for that to come back and bite us in the bum later.
And I think it is very much about the softer skills as well now. Whereas before I would talk to a lot of companies and they go, yeah, that's very nice, but it's not quite the training we need. We need them to be selling, so we'll do we'll do sales training with them instead. I think without doubt now companies have got to be looking at the softer skills for their employees, and to show that care, that kindness, that act of kindness, that support that they're giving for their mental health as well as the bottom line.
To each other, and not just at managers' levels, but to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to cover?
You've already got some questions here. I think people have got answers.
Some questions. I mean, I think we have got a question thanks very much for your nice comments, Mike, about the quality of the presentations. He says they're fantastic. So
thank you.
Thank you.
But Mike's also asking a question whether long-term sick, that they can go on furlough.
Yes.
Entitled to furlough. So
yes, they can. I think I kind of mentioned, I touched on that before. If they're genuinely off sick and they would otherwise be on SSP, yes, if furlough is available for them, you can put them onto furlough. That's absolutely fine. Yeah,
no, that's good.
I think take each one on its merits. Every situation, where every sickness absence is kind of individual, and if someone's just self-isolating, technically they should go onto SSP. you know, for that 2 weeks, and if it's self-isolation, then you can reclaim that back if you're a smaller business. But yeah, if they're already on furlough and they're self-isolating, why would you bring them off of SSP, really? I mean, just leave them where they are. Yeah. You're not going to get into trouble with HMRC for that.
Right, fantastic. That's no problem, Mike. So there we are. So we've also got a question from Mark. For 0 hours people to be furloughed, must they have been paid something on 31st of October? i.e., is this what is meant by on the payroll?
Well, they'll be on your payroll. So if you've taken them on your books, they will have had to have some earnings, because you've got to base the average earnings on something. Yeah. So I mean, if you took them on the books, technically, if you took them on the books, say the beginning of April, and they've never done a day's work for you, then they don't get anything. They don't qualify for anything. So there has to have been some earnings in that period for you to be able to do the calculation on. If it's nothing and they just sat there, like on a bank, if you've got someone on a bank list where you just keep them there just in case, but never have used them, then they wouldn't be entitled to anything because they haven't earned anything in the qualifying period.
Yeah.
However, if they'd just missed October, if they didn't work any hours in October, but they had previously, then of course, as long as they were on the RTI submission previously, they would be entitled to furlough. As Mandy said, you'd calculate it on the average from their start date.
Yeah. So if they've got some earnings at some point in their history there, then yeah. I mean, even if they weren't furloughed previously, but they were still on your books, say on the 28th of February, but had done a load of work in the 2019-20 tax year, then actually their earnings would be based on those, on that. You know, you could use those earnings there. So there's ways around it. But the issue is, if they've never earned anything at all, then there's nothing. You're doing 80% of zero.
Okay. Now, I know the matter about directors being paid has sort of come up again. I mean, there was quite a campaign, obviously, to get directors on, who've been paid dividends last time. We've got a question here. There was something with the previous furlough scheme along the lines of directors of companies who are paid, i.e. taking a salary, not dividends, could claim furlough subsidies if they were not working, but they could still do director type activities which relate to the company. Is that still?
Yeah, that's the same. So if you're an employee, because it's with your employee as a director with your employee hat on. So the usual things, because you lovely accountants usually tell us directors of businesses that we should do that minimum of 720 quid a month. But there are some directors that take a bigger salary. Yeah, and if they're on a salary, that salary is reported to HMRC on the RTI, then they're entitled to be furloughed. The key thing with directors, and I had this conversation with a client of mine yesterday who's proposing to furlough his whole company for 2 months, just close it down for 2 months. Can I be furloughed because I take a salary? Yes, you can, but you cannot do any work. So director responsibilities only are like filing your annual accounts, probably not much more. So no emails, no marketing, no chatting to start. You just can't. And what will happen? Who's going to find out? Well, you've got to spin that dice, spin that wheel, and HMRC might come and audit you. And what they'll do is they will look at things like your emails. They'll look at like logging in into systems and all this kind of stuff to see what you've been up to. So I think, and this is only my view, personal view, but I think they will take a good long look at directors who are claiming furlough.
Well, actually, this leads into a question from one of our listeners. Further to your slide, that HMRC intend to publish details of employers who use the scheme for claim periods from December. Yeah. HMRC went on to say, and employees will be able to find out if their employer has claimed for them under the scheme. So is this HMRC looking for employees to become whistleblowers? Well,
they already are. I think they've had, last I heard, there was about 6,000 or 7,000 calls have been made to the hotline. To blow the whistle on their employers one way or the other, because what you've got is situations where employees may be working and their employers are claiming furlough without their knowledge. They haven't bothered with any agreements. In fact, I spoke to a company a couple of months ago who was going through a bit of a dispute situation, and one of the things the employee brought up was that the company was claiming furlough illegally because they've got people to do a bit of work here and there. And when I challenged the employer and I said, look, you cannot get them doing anything. And I saw a couple of emails where these people had clearly been working. So they're not going to be interested in us. We're just a small business. They're not going to, as did we, you spin that wheel at your peril, because what they will do is they won't just take the furlough away from you for that particular individual, they will take the lot away from you, and you'll face heavy fines as well. So it's a very big risk that people take if they get done. And actually, it's wrong. Morally, ethically, it's the wrong thing to do. The rules are very clear. Furlough is a fantastic benefit to keep people going. Unfortunately, there will always be scammers, won't they, in this life? People that flout the rules. But I think they are encouraging. I think HMRC are looking for people to report abuse.
Yeah. No, it seems it's not really obvious anymore who's working, if you know what I mean. No longer could you go past a place of work and see the place packed.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I don't know about everybody else's view, but this time I'm working in the office. It's only me. I'm kind of Billy no mate, so I come from my home and come here, and it's only me here. The rest of the team are working from home. But what's been interesting is that it's not nearly as quiet around and about as it was in the first time round. It's quite marked, the difference, actually. And I think the first day I came into the office, which was the first day of lockdown, on last Thursday, it was like any other day.
Yes.
It was like any other day. It was really quite weird. And I remember last time thinking, I went out in the car and, like the only one on the road, and it felt really odd. So I think it is different.
Be around the school opening, with the children at school, sort of like. I think
it's partly, I think, but not completely, because it was far too busy, and it was slightly later in the morning as well. So the school runs had been done, but I think
that enables people to go to work a bit more.
Absolutely. Well, no, it's a good point. It is. No, you're absolutely right. It does enable people to go to work, which is great. But it does feel different. It does feel different. Yeah.
But we are getting some different consequences of home working still, aren't we, Holly? With people, working hours, different hours, and
I think.
I mean, we use a lot of technology in our business, obviously. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of positives that have come from the shift and people working from home. I mean, people can work more flexibly now, which means they can work around their childcare or caring, and that's definitely a positive. Lots of technology has made this possible. However, on the flip side, sort of what Paula was saying, now meetings aren't face to face; they're on the screen. So people are spending so many hours now at their screen. They're not getting up and walking to the meeting and seeing someone face to face, taking time away from that screen. Again, I think people do feel pressure to be present all the time. And whereas in the office you could get up and make a cup of tea and not worry someone might think you're not working, at home, if you leave your desk to go make a cup of tea and someone tries to call you or email you and you don't get back, I think a lot of employees feel pressure that they have to be responding to emails and they have to be present. And I think it's really important for managers and senior staff to lead by example and take a regular lunch break, go for a walk on their lunch break and encourage their staff to do the same, and demonstrate that perhaps if a manager, you might have to be sending emails out of hours, but you do not expect your employees to respond after their normal hours of work. And I think if managers can lead by example and we have that, then it could really be a positive experience, and hopefully there'll be less people burning out and the anxiety of being present, it will sort of decrease, because there definitely has been positives of it as well. But yeah, we do need to be careful about people burning out and like Paula was saying, their anxieties around.
One thing I think is I've just noticed a question come up, I think from Ernie, I've noticed there, that I want to maybe talk about. What about employees who say, I'm not coming back, I'm too scared, I don't think it's safe in the workplace. Now, it's called what's called a Section 44 claim under the Employment Rights Act. So if an employee genuinely believes that their safety and their health and their safety is at risk in some way, then they are entitled they don't have to come into work. Okay, so it's that they have a right. So what they've got to be able to demonstrate, though, is their employer hasn't taken any reasonable steps to make the workplace safe, that there isn't reasonable alternatives. But if they genuinely have that belief, then they have the right to stay at home. You cannot dismiss or discipline them for that. And then that would be an automatic unfair dismissal, which is like discrimination, would be uncapped. So it's a real problem area. but many are also under the illusion that, so that's fine, so you have to pay me. No, that's not the case. So you can't discipline them, and I'm not pretending this is an easy situation, but if they absolutely refuse to come, we've got some that said, I'm not coming back to work until there's an effective vaccine. Well, whilst we're, there's some positive lights there, that could be months and months and months away, years away. So if they do that, then they're not paid. Then you do not have to pay them, right? Because you have to be ready, willing, and able to come to work. And if as an employer you can demonstrate you put all those necessary measures in place, then that's fine. You can't fire them. You don't have to be paying them. That kind of sharpens the senses slightly, because it's not sick. They're not sick. Yeah. They're just not coming in, so it's unpaid absence. Yeah. So it is a difficult one, and it does need to be worked through. It's not something that you can just say, fine, you sit at home and you don't deal with it. It does need to be dealt with, and there's that I'm not going to say there's one easy way through that. You have to navigate your way through the minds in dealing with that kind of thing and deal with, because that's where maybe we talk to someone like Paula. There's just clearly some stresses and some anxiety there that maybe they need some extra help to work through, and some reassurance. So it's not as easy as saying, well, just sit at home, then we won't pay you. You've got to try and work it out, because otherwise you could just go on forever. But hopefully that answers your question, Ernie, that you were asking there. What is it? So yes, do they have a right? But it's quite a burden of proof that they've got to demonstrate that they really, definitely, seriously feel that they're going to be at risk if they come. Now, if it's someone that's maybe got some very serious underlying health issues, maybe they've been previously shielding, and they feel that if they come out into the workplace, into that wider world, that
I think last time round there is a difference as well, in that last time nobody really knew what to do. If you know what I mean, it took a while to get workplaces safe, but I think there's been so much work done over the summer that I think it's valid to say that workplaces are some of the safest places to be.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You just see all the measures when you go into supermarkets and places like that, and offices. A lot of money and effort and time has been spent in getting all the workplaces in a safe situation. So I think employees would have a pretty tough time really holding that claim up. Yeah, it's probably more likely that there's underlying anxieties that need to be addressed more than anything else, to be honest with you. So,
Andy, there is this situation where there are some employers who are just still ignoring the whole thing and not communicating and not doing.
I think they are the exception than the rule, if I'm honest with you. But I'm maybe the optimist, and that's the kind of way I look at things. I like to think the best of people. I think probably there are some situations like that, but I think they are exceptions. I do think there are exceptions. Everyone's worked particularly hard because they don't want to get sued, and generally don't want people to be ill, because actually ultimately it affects their business as well. So why wouldn't you put the measures in place if it helps you to make sure your business continues and has a future? So but yeah, I think if you experience a situation like that, what I would say is go and get some advice. Give me a shout, give someone like Paula a shout, because that particular individual clearly needs some additional support, and it's an issue in itself that needs to be worked through.
Okay, well, we've reached the end of the time. Was there anything else you just wanted to put in there, Paula, or are you?
No, that's it. I mean, obviously, if employers have got an issue with somebody like Mandy's just said, please just give me a call. Always happy to have a chat over the phone. No problem at all to give help and advice.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to our speakers today. To Mandy, thank you.
Welcome.
To Paula.
You're welcome.
To our own Holly for joining in today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
So next week we have a session on strategic tax planning during and beyond the pandemic. So if you're looking at tax issues, personal tax issues, business tax issues, we're going to have some top speakers next week. Same time, same place, 10 o'clock next Friday. And we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.